our next speakers, they rewrote, fixed, and optimized a test suite with over 1,000 test cases. And now they want to share what they learned. Are you ready to welcome on the stage Luca and Angelo?
So it's 25 minutes, should be enough. In the beginning, there was only chaos. The world was ruled by exhausting manual tests. Epidemics constantly afflicted the population. Subjugated testers, condemned to mechanically repeat heavy tasks, became ill from the plight of those dark times. Regression. Sometimes, in the countryside, the old legend of test automation returned. It was narrated that far-flung northern countries were flourishing and they had managed to beat regression. One day, finally, a stranger arrived to change the destiny of the world, the automation hero. Just like in the legend, the hero brought the solution to all the problems, but warned that the prophecy threatened them.
Use test automation, but respect the command, otherwise a worse fate than regression awaits.
Testers immediately started to use test automation and abandoned old manual tests. Even the regression slowly disappeared. But the command was difficult to adhere to. One by one, they stopped following it and carried out tests ever more fragile. The prophecy came true. The fragile tests woke a dragon who caused panic and destroyed all test automation. And so, testers were bound to revert to the old, hard life of manual tests, afraid to wake again the dragon. Test automation was then abandoned, and regression came back stronger than before. Hello, everybody. My name is Luca.
Hi, my name is Angelo. I'm the automation hero.
And I'm the Agile Master.
We work both for Chile, an Italian streaming company.
Basically, the Italian Netflix.
Just a little bit smaller than Netflix, but it's okay.
Okay, let's try to be serious from now on. So, what is the moral of the story? I guess that this is something that happened to many teams. Everyone that is used to test automation knows that it's not enough to write tests to have real value from them. We have been recently passed through against the cavalry of fixing a lot of tests, brittle tests, in order to have a real interesting and working test automation. So we want to share what we learned, and I hope this will be useful also in your test automation. But let's see what exactly is the brittle test with Angelo.
Okay, brittle means fragile or easy to break. So test that is IT coupled with the implementation, where a small change of the code can break the test, it's a brittle test. It's a test that has not a deterministic result. So from the same input, like same data, with different run, it gave different results. For example, with for run, we give 2 pass and 2 fail. When we talk about brittle, we don't talk not only by the test code, but also of the underlying things that create a crash of the automation, like slow environment or other thing.
But raise your hand if you ever had to deal with brittle tests. Oh, okay, so we are not here for nothing. And let's see together what are the consequences of brittle tests, first of all.
Okay, the first consequence is the high maintenance cost. Okay, the brittle concept can be extended to the keyword or the part of the test. So, for example, when I create a bit of keyword for error and I use for a lot of tests, the test automation go brittle, and all the tests that use this keyword go brittle. So the percentage of fail rise up. And I have a roller coaster-like result trend because randomly something pass, something fail, run by run. This means a lot of debug and manual tests to verify if there is a real bug or just a fake fail. And obviously, you have to fix a lot of broken tests every run. But let's see a real example with Luca.
So you have a nightly regression test, more than 1,000. That takes 10 hours, for instance. And most of the time, those tests are simply working as expected. But once, many times failed because of the precondition. So a precondition that maybe was brittle failed a big part of the test suite. What happened is that we are going to analyze the reason of the failure, and we detected that the problem is just the precondition. Of course, business is pushing to release based on this report, and we have to take a decision if we want to release or drop. Of course, normally, this is always working. This time, it's failed. We analyze the reason. So what would you do? Release or not? Who is going not to release? Those are good boys. We normally say, OK, normally all these tests are working, so why not release since the business is pushing? This happens because there is cognitive bias that we might think that all the tests failed because of precondition. Because it's information that we have because they failed because of precondition. But what if instead the real fail has been hidden by the failure of the precondition? We release a bug, and we did sometimes. So we talked about a lot of fails, not deterministic fail, hidden fails. That's normal. So if the automation crashed, who cares? I mean, it's always crashing. And this is basically what we want to avoid. So having a useless feedback, because as a manager or as a quality assurance team, we want that our Oracle robot framework says, OK, there is a problem, yes or no. Shall we release, yes or no? Not yes, but let's see how many tests fails. So this is something that it's a very big problem in the feedback of the test automation. But Angelo, what happened when the feedback is worthless?
Okay, we have worthless feedback, so the feedback basically be ignored because it's useless. And why I have to maintain a useful thing? So maintenance start to be avoided. But without maintenance, tests get even more broken. And automation is not trusted anymore. So this is a vicious loop, and we have to avoid it. But the people start to ask, why I spent a lot of effort with no result, and no result means no commitment in the people.
But what makes our tests brittle?
And how can we defeat the dragon?
OK, I bet everyone knows the testing pyramid. No? Hero, get the weapon. OK, joking. Everyone knows this. And this is the figure, the shape of a perfect test suite, like ours. No? Ours was more like the ice cream, that is exactly the antiparton of the testing pyramid. And we had a lot of manual tests. They are not brittle. They're just bad. And a lot of UI tests that, of course, they are brittle by default because the UI is the thing that we are changing much often. And they are quite slow. So how can we avoid the ice cream, Angelo?
Okay, simple solution. You have to push down the test down to the pyramid. If you cannot push down the test, you can try to push part of the test, like setup or tear down. Do the setup or tear down with your API or with your DB, because isn't a part the function that you have to test, the setup or the tear down. And API or DB is more safe. Let's see another problem.
Yes, another problem is the holistic test. So you might fall in the holistic trap of doing, okay, let's start doing the registration test, for instance. I will do the setup, I do this registration, then I will do all the asserts for the registration. And then I say, oh, now I have a fresh new user. I can do also the login. So I do the login, and I put other assert. Oh, now we have a login session. I can buy something, and I add other things and other things. Then copy-paste the same test, and that's my switch that is completely coupled and very big and huge. Another problem could be similar, having dependency between tests. Let's say you'd never close the browser, so you have all the tests that are just depending on the previous. If the first crash, of course, all the others will fail. This is something that should be avoided. Also because what happens is that you now have to debug more to see what is exactly the failure. You don't have the clear feedback of your test automation. This can happen also, as Angelo said, on the setup. So if we have a holistic setup, so my team have one setup for everything. No? I create the user, I create the API session, I connect to the database. If I share the same setup, it's very easy because, okay, I just put the setup. It's one for all the tests. But you are coupling all the tests together. So if the setup fails, all the suite tests fails. And you are adding a lot of overhead of things that you don't really need that slows you down your test automation and increase the possibility of having brittle tests. So how would you fix this kind of test, Angelo?
Okay, simple solution. One test must test one thing. Separate the test, do one test for registration, one test for login, one test for logout, for example. Remember, you can do more registration tests using data-driven, but one test must have one scope. Extend the single responsibility principle to the other part of the test, like setup or tear down. So don't do a giant setup for all, separate the setup part. And remember to do a single assert in your test. For example, when I registered a user, I check the user exists. I don't start to check the entire page, the footer, the header, the menu. I check only what I have to check. Let's go on.
Okay, so the first day, the automation hero created test automation, and the second, the sleep function. Everybody had used the sleep to synchronize tests at the beginning. No? So it's something that happens, and it's, of course, a bad design. It's not the only one, and there are many reasons why people start using a pattern that should not be applied to tests. First of all, is that, for our experience, the test automation is a best effort activity, because you normally have to transition from manual test to automation. So the same person needs to do manuals and catch up with all the functions developed, plus creating tests. So what is going to happen is to create a lot of dirty code, because you need quick feedback and have not much time. So this will increase also the time you get used with the tool. So the learning curve will increase. And in the end, people will be less ready to create better tests and to know better designs. So, solutions.
Let's go the solution. You have to invest in automation. Automation cannot be a best effort activities. Okay. Second one, you have to agree on development guideline. For example, Pekka, how to write good test case. Good work, Pekka. Or create your own guidelines depend on development of the company. Do code review to catch mistake, to catch error, to improve yourself. Sleep example. Do pair development to align the development style and skills. Remember to apply the Boy Scout rule. Always leave the code better than you found it. It's a way to do opportunistic refactor. And try to reduce technical debt with the opportunistic refactor. So, Luca, tell us more about technical debt.
Yes, basically is what slows you down over the long term. So as we said before, if we are always writing quick and dirty code, our code will be a mess and won't scale and won't be easy to be maintained. And this is everything that is always a bad habit. Eric Niebuhr has an interesting example, and that says that not all the debt is bad. There is good and bad. When there is this difference. For instance, if you have to cook something and you need to slice some vegetable, if you keep cleaning every tool that you use, you will drastically reduce your performance and you will interrupt the flow. You cannot just keep cleaning and for every vegetables and clean up all the kitchen every time. So you need to create some mess at the beginning, take all the needs for your development, like cooking, and do some creativity and experiments. This is everything that is good. When it's finished, so when you know that it's working, and test-driven development helps in development, you can just clean up that part and you are done. When instead there is bad debt, when you have to prepare dinner and enter in the kitchen, there are the dishes from yesterday. So it's slowing you down on what you need to do now, and maybe you have the children that are screaming, etc. So what is the solution that's suggested by Eric Niebuhr? You can set up a debt ceiling, limits, and your flow will be more or less like this, because you introduce new good debt, but you will always introduce some old and some bad debt, because if you create something now, if you code now, the code seems perfect. If you look after 1 hour, maybe I should change something, the day after is total crap. So you always forget and you always leave something behind you. But when you reach the limit, you should clean up, stop creating new tasks or new features, and reduce technical debt. There are other reasons of brittle situation, brittle unit tests, test suites. One is related to the environment. You normally have an undersized environment because it's not the production one. And you might have a developer that is changing the website and HTML, the IDs while you are doing tests. Then you have some crazy developer that keep pushing new version of the service, also called internal server error hero. And then you have business, then you have DevOps that does experiment, then you have a super mega complicated query okay, I've lost all the point. That kills your environment. So how can you avoid this problem, Angelo?
Okay, you can create a dedicated test environment for your automation where no one put hand on it to avoid mad developers experiment, for example. Next, you have to pay for limitless resource. This is the only way. No, joking. You can reduce the load of your server, remove users' job, remove users' data, remove useless batch, so the automation can run. And mock the third-party systems, because it's a problem if the third-party system go down and you call it, or use good sandbox. And always strive for best performance, especially with the backend test. Don't do a giant test that overload your server. Strive for performance. See another problem.
Another problem is related to the data. It's common to identify data with static IDs. Like in our case, we have a movie. Let's say we need a movie that at the moment is at the cinemas. So let's pick up Star Wars, take the IDs, and just put in the code. And this is our precondition. Take one film at the movie. But after 1 month, the movie is not at the cinema anymore. So the test fails. And this happens with movies, but I guess that there are other situations. So hard coding data and IDs for product, it's not a good idea. And another problem would be if you want to buy something and you keep buying the same thing because you are coded what you are buying every time, then in the end you might get out of stock. So if it gets out of stock, the tests are failing, and for no reason. So, Angelo, how can we manage dynamic resources needed for tests?
Okay, you have the API, you have a DB, so do the data preparation. Prepare your data with the setup before the test, so you have a perfect data to test. For example, create a merchandise in stock and buy it during the test. If it is too hard to do, try to do data targeting. Open a DB connection, query the DB, and search for a product that is in stock to buy. Remember, for the limited resource problem, teardowns matter. Use the teardown to restore the resources that you use. So, for the next test, you have the resource that you need. And
so far, you had all tests done, no brittle, everything perfect, but someone needs to execute the test. No? And if the execution is like this, and you need so long CLI commands to run on your computer, probably since people is lazy, is not going to be executed. And it happens that the results are like this because they are not comparable, and basically you are not getting any feedback from the test automation. So, Angelo, how can we fix this?
Okay, you have to create the continuous test system like Jenkins pipeline. Run the automation daily or nightly on 1 hour, depends. Do the continuous testing to collect feedback and view the feedback every day. Reduce or remove barrier to the test execution. Prepare a pipeline when the tester or someone other have only to push a button to launch the automation, not to write a complicated string on the terminal. And do a daily stand-up or discuss about the feedback to see if there is a bug or decide what tests need maintenance.
Okay, so this is the end. We defeated the Dracon, but we are still vigilant not to awake it again. And we hope this presentation was useful also for you, in order to have a stable presentation. But let's thank also some other people.
Thank to the QA team and the art director, Matteo aka Il Maestro, and all silly developers that take part of the automations.
If you have any question, we will be around. Otherwise, here you find our contacts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have an important question.
All right.
It's about the costumes.
Yes.
So, Luca, you were wearing something that's basically like Finnish basic fashion. That's.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't know.
But how about you? What were you wearing?
That's eBay GRV armor.
Okay. It looks like it has all the belts.
Yeah, made of scraps, basically.
All right. Hey, questions? Anyone? There.
Thanks for the talk. I'd like to ask you, how do you recognize that the debt ceiling has been reached? And what data do you use for that?
That's a good question. There are no rules. Every team should decide how to decide which is the depth. There are some indicators like the number of the time that you spend in doing maintenance, or probably you can just pick up like decide some sort of voting inside the team and decide, okay, in your opinion, what is the situation of the code right now, starting from 1 to 5, and keep doing this voting during the time to see if the average is reaching some sort of limit that you decide. For instance, would be if when you reach 3 or 2, you start doing cleanup.
How many of you think that you have more technical depth than you should? Most.
It's not always bad. That's a good thing.
So, good talk. Once you have beaten the dragon, what will you do next?
Sorry, when?
What will you do next? What is the next dragon?
The business dragon.
Maybe.
Or make money?
We try to do agile, but it's difficult.
Yes, we started doing a lot of agile in the IT, and we are trying to actually to bring the agile ideas and mindset in all the company.
So you're feeding a waterfall dragon.
Yeah. Yes.
Fight it with fire.
Order for requisites for a moment.
One more question there.
Thank you. So you started with a set of tests that might contain multiple processes in the one, registration, logging, and so on. And after you made those things atomic, did you find any effects on the total execution time? If they all had previously had the shared setup, did you actually increase the total execution time, or what were your findings?
I think there are not that many differences if you just split. It's just a matter of the reports that are more clear and what gets executed later. What we have been able to we have been able to increase a lot the performance, moving setups from UI to API. So we started to focus the UI test just on what we are really testing. All the rest is just not considered on the UI and done on the back end. We grew up a lot of keywords to interact with the back end, so it's easy for us. And we might create, let's say, multiple tests. There are testing different things on the UI, and some of them are overlapping. So we keep having a whole, let's say, flow of the test on the UI, but all the preconditions are made in the background with API tests. Maybe we keep just one end-to-end to make sure that the whole flow is not broken. But we'll try to keep the scope as narrow as possible. That increased a lot the performance and reduced the brittleness.
Okay, thanks.
All right, let's give a big hand to Luca and Angelo. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.